Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Yeah, we're glad you're here with us here on this Thursday, December 11th. Man, we get closer and closer. Can you believe 2 weeks to Christmas? I don't know about you, but someone this morning mentioned that today was the 11th. I'm like, oh, 2 weeks away. Yeah, I'm that guy who my wife buys stuff like in October, your Christmas gifts. I'm the guy who like is coming up, right about now going, oh, I probably should ask people what they want for Christmas. We'll work through all that. Listen, we've got, obviously, again, another crazy day in sports. Let's get to it. It's gonna be a good hour. We'll spend it together having some fun and also shaking our heads, including the situation with Michigan football. Is one of these that Wednesday night on December 10th, year of our Lord 2025. You'll always remember I was doing blank when I heard the news about Sherrone Moore. There's a way to put your name in the annals of sports history. This ain't it. And it's unbelievable that this young man at 39 years old, his coaching career is over like that. Done. Boom. This guy, it appears I would be stunned if he ever coaches again with the way this went down. Obviously, it's the news of the day we're talking about. Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the Wolverines fired their head coach, Sherrone Moore, for cause. Athletic Director Ward Manuel on Wednesday said this, quote, Sherrone Moore has been terminated with cause effective immediately. Following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. This conduct constitutes a clear violation of university policy, and UM maintains zero tolerance for such behavior. Okay, obviously there's a lot of reporting out there. People were doing a great job of digging into a lot of things. As you know, as of this morning, Sherrone Moore was not at home. He was actually detained at a facility. There are reports that he threatened to kill himself and then broke into the staffer's home, who is the other person involved, threatened to kill her as well as himself. And then later, police in that part of Michigan tracked him down, took him into custody for, I'm sure, threats, whatever you have. It appears that his wife was tracking him on using his phone as a tracker and was able to find him before he harmed himself or someone else. Sherrone Moore began the day as the coach of one of the preeminent programs in all of college sports. Listen, if you were to say, okay, name me 5 of the biggest franchises in sports. In football, I mean, it's Notre Dame, it's Alabama, it's Ohio State, it's Michigan, and throw in one other. If you want to maybe say, it's Texas or Georgia or Penn State. I mean, look, that's not the conversation we're having here. You can debate whoever else deserves in that. But I think we all would agree those 4 are part of that. So when you're at Michigan and you're 39 years old and you're the head coach, dude, you've made it. You are there. Moore was elevated to the position at the end of the 2023 national championship season when the Wolverines went undefeated. He actually served as interim head coach for 6 of those 12 regular season games because Jim Harbaugh served 2 separate 3-game suspensions for violations within that program. He then left to coach the LA Chargers in the NFL. This is Moore's program. So a lot of talk out there that, again, he submitted his university issued cell phone as part of the Connor Stallions investigation and the sign stealing and all of that. And there's been some reporting that possibly there were some text messages on that helped lead to this action. But it's unbelievable what has happened here very quickly. Sherrone Moore, 16-8 in his 2 seasons with Michigan. He'd been on the staff since 2018 when he was hired as a tight ends coach. Later was named offensive coordinator before taking Harbaugh's place. He's married with 3 daughters under the age of 6. So there's a lot to unpack here with this program. But again, terminated as coach. By the way, he had roughly a $12 million buyout. But they have said he is fired with cause. And let's be clear. Just saw a tweet this morning about someone said, listen, there's no violation of NCAA policy here. No, it's not. It's a violation of university policy. And listen, stuff happens. People do things. You can't, as a man in position, as someone who is in a position of authority, you can't get involved with a staffer, someone who is a subordinate. You just can't. That is a recipe for disaster. The university had to fire him to make sure that they took action in case there is a lawsuit later. There's a legal issue later on to go with this anyway. Sherrone Moore is out. The question now is who takes the place. Jesse Minter, who was a former defensive coordinator there at Michigan, followed Harbaugh to the Chargers. He's a name that is high on the list. My question to them is, do you want to bring somebody in who is involved in the Connor Stallions case? His 1 year show cause, you have to show cause why you would hire him for any college program, expires on Monday. So he still really, as of today, is under the show cause for the violations of stuff that happened under Connor Stallions. My 2 cents, and no one wants my 2 cents, and that's fine. I'll throw it out there, leave it on the ground. If I'm Ward Manuel, if I'm the AD of Michigan, I stay away from anything involving the Harbaugh regime and move on to a clean slate somewhere else. You did it in basketball with Dusty May, Juwan Howard, who I love and respect, was hitting people. You can't punch other coaches. You can't punch other staffers at the university. They went and got Dusty May. And of course, we talked the other day about Michigan and what they're doing in basketball. So Michigan football now, it's a mess. By the way, they do have the assistant who has been named the interim to coach during the bowl game as they make that search. Okay. Elsewhere in college, meanwhile, the most traveled defensive coordinator in the history of college football. Not really, but it seems like that. But this guy moves an awful lot. Jim Knowles on the move again. He helped shape Ohio State's title-winning defense last year when they won the national championship and was quickly hired for like $3 million to be Penn State's head of their defense in 2025. Well, you know what happened with Penn State this year? The Lions fired their head man, James Franklin, back in early October. It was clear at that point that Knowles would be on the move again. And so now it appears he is headed to the SEC to become the defensive coordinator for Tennessee. The Vols fired their DC, Tim Banks, earlier this week as head coach Josh Heupel looks to shore up the defensive side of the ball. They're also headed to a bowl game in Nashville at the end of the month. Some other college football news. Now, you know, the ACC and SEC both are going to 9-game conference schedules in 2026. As a result, some teams got to do some shuffling. UGA, Georgia, and Louisville agreeing to cancel their series that was supposed to begin next year in 2026. Georgia also canceling their series with NC State for the 2033 and 2034 seasons. By the way, had Louisville not agreed to this, Georgia would have been on the hook for $1 million payment to them for canceling this. But Louisville said, no, we get it. We've got the same thing going on. So they'll move on. They'll try to schedule that at a later date. By the way, Louisville, nice opener for them. They will open the 2026 campaign in early September in Nashville against Ole Miss, which is, pretty cool. Ole Miss right now in the playoff. But again, ACC and SEC. Now, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey said, hey, we're playing a 9-game schedule, but you have to also, in your 3 non-conference games, have to play at least one Power 4 school in that. So again, the big changes there. Indiana Hoosiers, they may be without their defensive end, Stephen Daly, for the college football playoff. He suffered a serious lower leg injury during the Big Ten post-game celebration after they beat Ohio State to win their first Big Ten title since 1967. Listen, Daly isn't just a guy. Since transferring from Kent State this season, he finished 3rd in the nation with 19 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks as well. This is a big loss for that Hoosiers defense there. So there's some stories there. College hoops, meanwhile, last night in the Big Ten, Purdue coming back strong after the beating they took Saturday against Iowa State. Braden Smith, 15 points, 12 assists, and 6 rebounds. Trey Kaufman-Renn, 14 points, 10 boards before leaving early as number 6 Purdue just blew out Minnesota 85 57. Rink Mast had 17 points and 10 rebounds. Number 23, Nebraska, taking over the game midway through the first half and then cruised to a 90-60 win over Wisconsin. The Huskers ranked in the top 25 in the AP for the first time since 2018. Now 10-0 in the season. That matches the best start in school history. They opened the 1977-78 season with 10 straight wins as well. So they have a chance to make it 11-0, a school record Saturday when they visit number 13, Illinois. Emmanuel Sharp had 23 points. Isaiah Harwell added 20. Number 7, Houston won its third straight game, routing Jackson State 80-38. On the women's side, Iowa State center Audi Crooks, the leading scorer in Division I women's basketball, had another huge game Wednesday night. The number 10 Cyclones stayed undefeated by beating cross-state rival Iowa 74-69. Crooks with 30 points and 10 rebounds. She's now averaging 27.8 points per game, shooting 72% from the field. By the way, that is still, as amazing as that is, second in Division I. But a great game for her and Iowa State as well. Both their men's and basketball teams still undefeated on this early season. Baseball winter meetings closing last night. No major trades announced. However, one big free agent signing to mention, the Baltimore Orioles, already flush with DH and first baseman, decided, you know what, the heck with pitching help. We need more one-dimensional players. Here we go. Get out the checkbook and sign 31-year-old Pete Alonso to a 5-year, $155 million deal. The 5-time All-Star for the Mets hit .272 last season with 38 homers and 126 RBI. He gives the Orioles a big right-handed bat that they have needed for the past few years. The NBA Cup quarterfinals taking center stage last night. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 28 points. Oklahoma City matching the best 25-game start to an NBA season by dominating the Phoenix Suns 138-89 in that quarterfinal game. The Thunder now 24-1. That ties the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors, who won their first 24 games before finally losing. Chet Holmgren, 24 points, 8 rebounds for the Thunder. They set a franchise record with their 16th straight win. Next up in the semifinals for the Thunder will be San Antonio. The Spurs getting the 132-119 win over the Lakers. Stephen Castle with 21 of his 30 points in the second half. De'Aaron Fox added 20 points. Keldon Johnson, 17 and 8 rebounds as the Spurs controlled the game throughout. Luka Doncic had 35 points. LeBron James, 19 points, 15 rebounds, and 8 assists for the Lakers. By the way, LA losing for only the third time in 12 games. So again, we love to see this. The NBA Cup, I love that. Going to this and adding some extra drama and excitement to the early part of the season when everyone's still kind of paying attention to college football, the end of the season, and now getting into the playoffs. The NFL in the stretch run here, everyone jockeying for playoff position for January. The NBA says, hey, wait, we're over here, and we're seeing some of their young stars like Castle, Doncic, Holmgren, Gilgeous-Alexander do their thing here in early December. Okay, we have got much more to come. College football. How do you fix the college football playoff? That conversation is next.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Obviously, college football is a lot of conversation right now. And here's the thing, producer Tony joining us now here on the Sports IQ. It appears we have a changing of the guard. You look at the 12 teams here in the playoff. Yes, there's the 2 group of 5 teams, and that comes down to, the ACC championship game not producing an automatic qualifier because the way the rules are written, the top 5 rated conference champions get in. Because Duke was so lowly rated because they lost 5 games during the season, that allows an extra group of 5 team coming in. So Tulane and James Madison, the 2 teams in there. But it's amazing that you think about the championship pedigree, national championship pedigree of 3 teams left out right on the doorstep, left out in the cold. Notre Dame, Texas, BYU, all have won national championships. And so it feels like, Tony, that there's a real changing of the guard right now in a number of ways in college football.
Yeah, I mean, we see these shifts every 10, 15 years. Look, it's not that Texas, Notre Dame, and BYU weren't deserving, because they were, all 3. You could make an argument for all 3 getting into the playoff. So the playoff really needs to be fixed. First of all, we've got to decide, what are we after?
Yeah.
Are we after a mix of teams throughout the country? Okay, then we've got to figure that out. But if you truly want to get to the best 12 or 14 teams, then that's what it needs to be. The committee can fix a lot of things. One, you don't have a committee meeting. Find somebody like a Ken Palm for football or the net ratings that they use in basketball. Somebody come up. There's some geniuses out there. If you're hearing my voice, geniuses, I'm not one of them. I couldn't figure this out if my life depended on it. If somebody were holding a gun to my head, say, come up with a computer program, I'll give you 30 days to figure it out, or you're out. Look, I'm done. Just shoot me now. It's over. Forget about it. I'm not going to be able to figure it out. But there are geniuses out there that can figure it out. Okay? Go to a computer program that weighs everything without any human bias involved.
Yeah.
Get that part squared away. Now take the best 12 or 14 teams, whatever you decide, or if we want to go up to 16 teams, let those teams play in. You can get rid of conference championship weekend. As you know, Larry, you've talked about it before. You make that a 3-6-4-5 in the conferences. If you're the Big Two, if you're the SEC and ACC, you're two automatically in. That should be the only automatics in this field. Period. End of story. If you're the top two teams in the SEC or the Big Ten, you're in. Everything else is in that large bit. That includes the Big 12. That includes the ACC. Because let's be frank about it, your conferences just aren't that good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. It's, I would love to see, like you said, just let's make that to where, because to your point, and let's just say, for this argument, and let's just say they go to 16 teams, right? So at that point, when that happens, if you have 16 teams, then BYU is going in. And so therefore, you have the top two teams from each conference going in. Now, if you're the ACC, you've got to decide how you're going to figure this out. Is it going to be Virginia and Miami, the top rated team that's left outside of the number one team, or is it a Virginia Duke? But you have your own rule set, as we said, or maybe a thing where it is strongly encouraged that you put in, if there is a question mark, and you've said this before, the top rated team takes that other slot to go there in the conference. So in that case, you have Virginia, Miami already in, Texas Tech, BYU already in, and we already know, again, the top four, the two finalists in both the Big Ten and the SEC are already in, to your point. And like you said, we're talking about numbers of games and wear and tear on the bodies of players and the risk of injury as we're expanding the season. Then, like you said, eliminate the conference championship games and schedule instead, like you said, 2 consolation games on that day to determine the best teams who, out of the 3 through 6. Look, it appears right now, when you look at what's happened these first 2 years, you're going to have a logjam at the top of both of these conferences because you're playing an unbalanced schedule. You're not playing head to head, right? I mean, that's why the ACC ended up where they were, because nobody played each other.
Right.
So there you go. But I'm with you. It'd be much more entertaining. You can still double the inventory in terms of ad inventory and the revenue you're making if you stage 2 games that day. I know it sounds crazy. No championship game with these other games, but you're talking about a play-in kind of thing. Let's make it to where the decisions are made on the field, not somewhere in a boardroom with a bunch of suits.
Absolutely. And let's make it fair for everybody. The other thing, you brought up, Larry, in the news was Louisville and Georgia canceling that game.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, if we're going to keep this playoff format intact, then let's make sure everybody's on the same playing field. You can tell me all around how great the SEC is. The Big Ten also claims to be the best conference, and they both have arguments, right?
Yeah.
Big Ten, you don't see them playing very many FCS schools, but you see every single SEC school with an FCS school on their schedule. Yeah. So in reality, each SEC team plays an 11-game schedule with 1 scrimmage because, let's face it, those are not games. Those are not games that should count towards your role in being in the playoff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those games are scrimmages.
Yeah.
Georgia could send out their 3rd string and beat Sanford or beat the College of Charleston or beat Eastern, Western, Oblivion U, whoever their schedule. So they drop Louisville. They manage somehow to be able to keep Western Kentucky, a low group of 5 team, and Tennessee State, an FCS school.
Yeah.
But you want to tell us that you got to play 12 weeks, that you played 12 strong, really tough weeks all season long. Look, the argument doesn't hold water anymore.
Yeah. And there are enough group of 5 teams, to your point, that you can schedule those games. There's no question. Now, I know the FCS schools are saying, wait a minute, you're killing us because we count on that $1 million check to fund 4 other programs within our university. You're right. But we're at the point right now where the stakes are there. If you're going to do that, if that's the case, then make it across the board. Then you have everyone listen. You're entitled across the board. You're entitled to every other year you can play an FCS school. But to your point, it has to be equitable to where, like you said, Big Ten schools rarely play. They may play one season opener, but not play them in November.
Right.
And it just doesn't happen very often. So I agree. It's got to be again across the board. And that's where I think too we're headed to, where there has to be some kind of uniformity. The NCAA is supposed to be that body to set rules and parameters. It's just not there with college football. So I agree with you. And that's where, again, like you said, you talked about the changing of schedules and dropping these teams. It's which team are you dropping? And I now here's the thing. I do applaud the ACC and SEC of finally going to a 9-game schedule. To me, it's a no-brainer. And I've complained about this for years. You're expanding. You're going from 12 teams to 16, 18 teams, but still only playing 8 schools, eight games in conference. It goes back to, and I've always used this analogy, when the Big East first expanded to 16 teams, right? 20 years ago. And oh my God, it's a super conference and blah, blah, blah. And Syracuse got left out of the NCAA tournament that year. They had a 10-6 record within the Big East. And Jim Boeheim just screamed and complained, oh, it's not fair. This is ridiculous. It's crazy. We're 10-6 in the Big East. But because you have you still only played 16, you have 16 teams, only 16 conference games, which means you only played one school twice. Right. So as a result, and this was when we saw this in 2009, when Louisville went through and under Rick Pitino, and they won the regular season crown, and then they won the Big East crown. And oh my goodness, ESPN announcers were crowing, oh, they may be the best ever. When it was clear all season long that North Carolina, who had 5 future first-round picks in their starting 5, they were the best team that year start to finish, and they proved in the end. But it was one of these things where Louisville got inflated because you saw this record. Well, guess what? Of the top other 3 teams in the league, they only had 2 games the entire season. So, and we're having the same thing right now where we'll have a different argument next year with different teams sitting 8-1, 7-2 in their leagues, because chances are there's some other teams in next year that won't play the power teams in the conference. They'll have an inflated schedule, and we're right back here in the same place again in 2026.
Absolutely. And the last thing that they need to change, look, you want to include FCS schools if they're rated in the top, whatever it is, whatever number we decide on, 12, 14, 16. If they're rated in there by these computer metrics, they're in. But keeping one spot for them to say, oh, we got to have a little guy because the college basketball always invites the little guys and you get these upsets. Yes, they get those upsets in the first round, but they never have a chance to win a title, right? And we know that at James Madison and Tulane, they don't have a shot. There is not a chance. Look, you got a better chance of electing Ilhan Omar from Minnesota as Pope than you do of getting one of those schools into the national championship game. Let's be honest. Okay. Yeah. So if they're rated in there, they're in. But stop holding a spot for them. You want good Cinderella stories? How about Mississippi State winning a national title? Wouldn't that be a great Cinderella story? How about Illinois winning a national title? That'd be a huge Cinderella story. Virginia winning a national title. That would be an incredible national story. South Carolina winning a national. There's enough Power 4 schools that have never won or haven't won it in the last 50 years a national title to give us the Cinderella factor in football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. In fact, to your point, I just did some math as we were talking. Since 1990, take a stab. How many different schools have won national college football championships?
I'm going to go with 9.
Since 1990, actually more than that, 17.
Okay.
Which still, out of 130 roughly Division I FBS schools. Now, that includes teams that some of our listeners may have forgotten ever won national championships. Georgia Tech in 1990, Washington in 1991. Nebraska won 3 titles in the 90s, haven't been on that level since Tom Osborne retired as their legendary coach. So again, that's one. Tennessee won one after Peyton Manning left in the late 90s. Again, they haven't been back in the conversation. Didn't make the playoff, I don't think, until they expanded it
last year.
Yep. Yeah. Oklahoma won one back in 2000. Again, have not been back in that, although they were in the BCS game. Tim Tebow's his last year there in 2009. Miami won one. USC was there, but again, that's been 20 years ago. So really, when you look at, once the SEC began its dominance with Florida's upset of Ohio State back in the 2007 BCS game out in Phoenix, and that began the run of SEC champions winning it all. To your point, at that point, you have only 9 in roughly the last 20 years, and we can go 10 if you want to include Texas stopping USC from the three-peats, right? So to your point, in the last 20 years, there's been only 10.
Yeah.
Total. So, yeah.
I mean, how big would it be for Rutgers to win a national championship? I'm not saying they can, but if you're looking for Cinderella stories, there's plenty in the Power Four. Syracuse hasn't come close to sniffing a national championship in football. Pittsburgh hasn't done it since Dan Marino and Tony Dorsett were there. So, look, there's enough really good stories that you don't really need the James Madisons, the Tulanes, those kind of folks, the outliers. If they're in the top 16, give them a shot. But to reserve a spot for them is wrong.
I agree. I look at a program like Oregon, that, as I've talked about on here, and I don't know if we didn't discuss this, but the Roy Kramer just passed away, the longtime SEC commissioner, considered the father of the BCS. I may have shared with you my verbal altercation with him years ago, because this was back when, and really it was one of the final nails in the coffin for the BCS, and where we want to go to a 14 playoff. But this was one where back we said the system has to change. Oregon was sitting right there with Joey Harrington at quarterback at number 3 in the polls, and the voters would not. Clearly some kind of, it's my conspiracy, but clearly something to it. No matter who lost out of the Big 12 or the SEC that year, Oregon out of the Pac-12 stayed right there at number 3. And it got to the point that even to where the Big 12 conference championship game, the favorite lost to a Duke type team. So those two weren't going in. So the number 3 team, Nebraska, that year didn't even make the Big 12 championship game, but went on to the national title game as the 3rd best team in the Big 12 to take on powerhouse Miami, and the Hurricanes blew them out. That's a kind of program, Oregon, that has been, if you go look it up, don't take my word for it, they have been a power for 30 years, winning 9-10 games a year, always in the mix, never getting a shot. Again, last year, the number 1 seed, they get knocked off by Ohio State, thanks to the quirky seeding. Those two shouldn't have played in the quarterfinals. But to your point, Oregon's one that deserves to be in there. Texas Tech has come on strong. Texas A&M has been right there, and they've had up and down seasons. They're in the mix now. So to your point, there's Ole Miss is one, like you mentioned. There are so many teams programs deserving. Get them in the mix, give them a shot. There's your Cinderella. And take nothing away from these other schools, a group of 5. But to your point, we have yet to see a mid-major win an NCAA championship, right? I mean, we saw San Diego State get to the title game the same year that FAU got to the Final Four. Those are great stories. We saw Butler back-to-back championship games, but they've yet to win it all. And if it hasn't happened in basketball, it ain't happening in football. Absolutely.
That's the capper. That's the thing. If you can't compare basketball to football, football is its own entity. And if you're really going to do it, get the best teams as proven on the field week in and week out in that championship playoff, whatever you deem it to be, however many teams.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, more conversation next on the Sports IQ.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Welcome back here to the show, and obviously talking a lot about college football. Very spirited discussion just a moment ago there about the changing of the guard. And one thing that has not changed is the Army-Navy game. Now certainly, decades ago, this was a matchup that was, very much with two teams in the hunt for a national title, possibly. These were, football, the game of football began in colleges. If you go back to, ESPN did a great documentary on this a few years ago. It goes back to, again, after the Civil War, trying to create a game to kind of keep young men tough, right? The problem is it was dangerous. There were no helmets, or the helmets were inadequate, and it wasn't uncommon for a young college football player to die on the field or because of injuries sustained on the field. So, we've come a long way in terms of that. It's a violent game, as we discussed, and we heard from our friend Craig Swope, the former NFL defensive back, interview we did a couple of weeks ago, detailing how painful the game is and some of the things he endured during his brief NFL career that ended because of injuries. But despite all that, despite with the evolution of the game through the generations and through the decades, Army Navy is still one that kind of just stirs the soul, right? These young men coming in and doing battle in a friendly way. So many years in Philadelphia, in Baltimore this year, there at the Ravens Stadium, there right there along the water. One of the real picturesque scenes right there all along the inner harbor there in Baltimore. 126 game matchup between these two, as both academies, the Naval Academy and the U.S. Military Academy up in West Point, celebrating their 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy. So let's listen in right now. First off, the coach from Army talking about this matchup.
It's exciting to be here, but we know that there's so much to be done. The preparation, the practices, the meetings, all of the things that go into having a team prepared to play their very best football in this game is what is really important. And so we're working, as hard as we can. We did all last week and have been this week, and we'll continue to prepare for our biggest game of the year. And our guys are working hard. They're excited for the opportunity. To play on a national stage like this is really rare in college football. There's not very many players that get an opportunity to do this, and probably not very many people in any sport that get a stage like this. So for our guys, the thrill that is, one of the reasons they came here is to be a part of this big game and this great rivalry. And as I said, the important part is being prepared and trying to play our very best, which we will. We're going to have to. They've got a great football team. They're very well coached, extremely talented, and certainly what they've done this year and last year, just really, really impressive. So we know it's going to be a great challenge, but that's what sports and competing is all about. So looking forward to Saturday and just the opportunity to be there and be in that ball game. Just the emphasis that's placed on this game throughout the year, and certainly from a mental and emotional standpoint, that this game is thought about far more than just the days leading up to it, whatever prep time that is. This year, being 2 weeks, and last year being a week to prepare for the game. We've often had multiple weeks to get ready for the game, and there's certainly a huge emphasis during that time. It's all about trying to beat Navy. But throughout the year, whether it's in spring practice or our preseason camp, we dedicate time to these games. And our academy opponents are different. Defending them is different, because they know us so well. Trying to have a game plan prepared on offense is different, and so it's an effort throughout the year. It's not something that every single day of every single week it's completely dedicated to this game, but there are moments in practice and times throughout each week that we'll have things sprinkled in, and maybe our players don't even know that we're just practicing a certain front against our offense, or throw a play in on on our defense that just kind of has them thinking about it, has them prepared for it, because there's nothing like playing in this game, Rich, and you've been here for a lot of them, as I have, and the execution of the assignments and fundamentals is what wins football games, and it's the same in this game. So, to your point, there's time spent throughout the year, but these last couple of weeks leading up to it, I mean, it's full throttle, and I think our guys are, they're really dialed in and getting prepared. Our guys are excited about the opportunity to play. They'll be prepared. Our coaches are they're putting together a game plan, have a game plan that we've been implementing and practicing that I think will give us the best chance, and that's our job as coaches, to put those guys in position and let them go play the game. And so, I've been really pleased with our team in the fact that we've had some disappointments over the course of the year. We've had some setbacks, but never have I felt like our guys wavered from their commitment to improving. Just always have come back the next week and they're fighting and giving their best effort. We practiced well. I think we've improved as a team, and we've had some setbacks, toward the end of the year. Obviously the loss to Tulane, that's a good football team, and we had them on the ropes and just couldn't finish it, but we answered. We came back and got a victory the next time out. We had a very disappointing loss against Tulsa. Pardon me. But we're able to answer with a great win at UTSA, and I think that's just speaks to the fight in our guys, that they've continued to play and continue to have a great spirit about winning. And so we've got to carry that into this week and carry that into the game on Saturday, and keep that fighting spirit and make it a great game. I hope we can.
Once again, talking about just the game and what it means to this. It's exciting to go through again and hear this, the pomp and circumstance. Some 800 celebrities will be there for this. It's always a big deal. Navy, the coach of the midshipmen, talking about this game as well.
We all know how physical this football game is going to be. We know how hard both teams are going to play, and the most important thing in this game is how well we can execute our plan, in all three phases. And so, you're playing stall, you're chasing things, making sure you're as prepared as you possibly can be. And you've got 2 weeks to get ready, which is great, but you got to be careful with that because you can get a little carried away in what you're doing. So the idea is for our kids to go play with as much confidence as they can on Saturday, so they can go play fast, they can go play fearless, and that they feel good about what they're doing. And so there's a fine line in there of wanting to carry enough into the game. Both teams are going to have some wrinkles, on both sides of the football, but what it comes down to is our ability to execute those things at a really, really high level. Because this game comes down to a team that makes the fewest mistakes will most likely win this football game. You're going to see something you haven't seen, right? And so you got to fall back on your training. You got to be great with your eyes. You got to do your job. All 11 guys on the same page. Communication is going to be obviously really, really critical. And then our ability to adjust within game, Joe, will be critical on Saturday as well. Like I said, I love what we're doing at this point. There's a lot of things to clean up and kind of continue to work through, but I like the plan. The most important thing is our ability to go out and execute that plan at a really high level. And so that's what we're going to focus on this week.
John Schofield here from the Alumni Association and Foundation. As you go into the biggest week of the year, the biggest game of the year, can you comment a little bit about the importance and the impact of the Navy Football Brotherhood to supporting this program the way they have for the entirety of your coaching career here? But, in particular this season and going into a game like Army, how critical is the support of the alumni base, particularly the Navy football alumni base?
Yeah, well, they've always been great, as long as I've been here, and I know how much our players appreciate that support and how much it means to our players to represent that brotherhood, the right way. And that's never lost on us. And so obviously on Saturday, we're representing our program, but we're representing a lot more than that, including the brotherhood. But we desperately want to make proud what we do, but also, all the men and the women in the Navy and the Marine Corps and our armed forces. Really important to me that we represent ourselves a certain way, and I know our guys take a lot of pride and they feel that responsibility and that pressure and really the privilege of being able to do that on Saturday. Yeah, we scored a lot of points and not just the academy games, but I think one of the reasons why I wanted to do what we're doing offensively is I didn't want to have to change our offense for the academy games, in the past, because both teams are so accustomed to defending the option. You kind of felt like you had to do something different or get in the shotgun and run some things that maybe you hadn't run all year, kind of get outside of yourself a little bit. I think with the nature of what we do, the ability to throw it and run it, we don't have to wholesale change like we did in the past. I think that's what you've seen, in these academy games.
Scott Wyckoff. Coach, how important is it for your players that might not and probably will not see the field on Saturday against Army over these 2 weeks to learn what it takes to prepare so when they're ready to play next year, they really know what they're up against?
Yeah, it's really important. I think to just understand the level of focus, the sense of urgency.
Okay, once again, it is Army versus Navy coming up this weekend. Always a great tradition. It's a time before the bowls begin. It is after the regular season ends, and now conference championship weekend is over. It is right there. A day that is punctuated. It's bracketed with the Army Navy game early in the day, and then later on that night, the Heisman Trophy winner. So it is always a very special day in college football coming up here on this Saturday. Okay, more conversation to come after this. Back here on the show. Hey, little baseball winter meetings. Let's talk about, first off, Tony's favorite team, the Orioles, actually wearing his Orioles shirt today, representing. Tony, I could tell you were really excited about what the Orioles did Wednesday.
Larry, oh my God. Come on, people. We've had a change of ownership in Baltimore, a new group. Angelos is out, but here we are making the same mistakes again. Let's go back. I was looking it up the other day, and they signed Chris Davis to that huge deal in January of 2016. Do you remember this thing? The big contract for Chris Davis. They gave him 7 years, $161 million, a bunch of money deferred, and the guy proceeded to go downhill faster than a go-kart, starting at the top. What is that race that they have for the go-karts and the kids down there, the soapbox derby? He went downhill faster than a soapbox derby cart.
With no brakes.
with none, zero, nothing to. And so the Orioles are on the hook for this guy in seasons where they left him he was so bad, they left him in the minors.
Yeah.
They couldn't call him up to the big, and you're eating up a whole bunch and you did it again with Pete Alonso. Now, I know they need a right-handed bat. I understand that, but you need pitching.
Yeah.
It's been shown. Look at what the Dodgers have done. They've got a great rotation. You need starting pitching. You're counting on 3 guys coming back from injury next year. Yeah, you just jettisoned Grayson Rodriguez. I get it. You haven't filled that void yet. And you're going into the season with a reclamation project at the top of your rotation, and Kyle Bradish as your number 2, who's coming off a very serious injury. So again, if they don't fill these spots, you're going to have a lot of holes in that rotation going in. I just would have thought they would have learned from that mistake. It's nothing against Pete Alonso, but you're trying to find a place for Samuel Basillo to play, and he's going to have to play some first base because you got Adley Rutschman at catcher, unless you're planning on trading one of those two. Maybe that's in the works. I have no idea. But you've got that, and you've got Ryan Mountcastle at first base. So now you're going to add in Pete Alonso to the mix. There's not enough at bats for everybody.
Yeah. No, there is not. There is not. And so again, it's one of those where, again, another head scratching moment, like you said, in Baltimore. Okay. Good luck with that in 2026. Baseball Hall of Fame, it coming through. And I know this is always, again, a moment we're always excited about to see who's going to be a part of this.
Yeah. I mean, I give the committee that used to be called the Veterans Committee. Now it's called the Players of Today Committee, or whatever they're calling it these days. And they elected Jeff Kent. I have no problem with that. Jeff Kent, probably one of the best hitting second basemen that have ever played the game. He was able to hit with power. He hit for average. He was part of some really good San Francisco Giant teams. I don't have any problem with that, but I don't understand. I'm trying to figure out how you cannot include Dale Murphy, who was for a decade one of the preeminent outfielders in Major League Baseball. Hit for power, hit for average, played on some horrible Atlanta team.
Yeah.
This guy was it. This was all they had. For a couple of years was him and Bob Horner. Yeah. But teams didn't have to pitch to him, and he still found a way to hit. He still found a way to impact the game. He was a very good defensive center fielder. He had a big arm out in center field. And yet you're keeping him out of the Hall of Fame. What did this man ever do to some of these people? Because he belonged. If you can find a space for Jeff Kent, if you can find a space for Harold Baines, who was a one-dimensional player, nothing against Harold Baines. He was a great hitter, but that's all he was. Yeah. Because his glove, the few years he played the outfield, was made of pure iron.
Yeah.
But you found a spot for Harold Baines in the Hall of Fame. You tell me you can't find a spot for Dale Murphy? That's just wrong. That is just flat out wrong.
And I don't understand why, to your point. I met Dale. He, even though he doesn't get in, I was up in Cooperstown years ago when I was working in Atlanta, and it was the year that Bobby Cox, Tom Glavine, and Greg Maddux all went in, right? They went in the same year. And I think Smoltz followed a year or two later. And Murphy was there. To go to Cooperstown, and you've been there, is on Hall of Fame week is amazing. I mean, there are superstars, a rock, a stone's throw away, no matter what direction you're in. And Dale Murphy was there, and I understand he goes there like every year and signs autographs, and he's pleasant and takes pictures and all of that. And it's like I always look and go, and I'm like, man, and I kind of joked. In fact, John Rocker was there. John Rocker is never going to be in the Hall of Fame, but he was there signing autographs. Saw Dale, and I asked him, I said, when have we got to get you in here? And he said, it'll happen. If it doesn't, I'm okay. And that's what's amazing to me is that not only, like you said, a great player, an amazing human, that for him, the Hall of Fame is not going to define who he is. Here's one question I'm going to throw out, and this is going to sound really weird, but I'm grasping for straws here. Is it a situation back when he was active, certainly after his career, was his faith held against him, being Mormon? And maybe it hurts me to say that, it's awkward, but I'm trying to grasp for an understanding of why he doesn't get in.
I mean, he played the last few years in Atlanta. He was playing hurt. He went to Philly after that, and again he played hurt. He was never able to get those numbers back up and get to where it was. But he was dominant for a decade. Look, I got to CNN in 1984 in the spring. How bad was Atlanta baseball then? Well, here's how bad it was. I could go to Turner Field with just my CNN ID. It's back when Ted owned the team.
Yeah.
They'd let us in. That's how many seats were available.
Yeah.
You could go and sit behind the home or visitors' dugout because there were all kinds of seats, and they didn't care where you sat.
Yeah.
All you had to do was show up with that, and if you had somebody with you, they let them in too.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to worry about buying tickets. We used to get free tickets from Turner when we were there. We didn't even need it for those games in the early 80s. But Murphy was out there every night doing his job, helping this team. Literally, this poor guy carried 22 other men on his back for seasons at a time. Yeah. Put the man in the Hall.
Yeah, please already. Exactly. Hey, one quick thought, back to the signing. Lack of deals during the winter meetings. That surprise you?
Yeah, it was really shocking. Like nobody, you always look forward to baseball to see what's the big trade going to be? Are the Yankees going to pull something? Are the Dodgers going to do something? Yeah, they signed Edwin Diaz. Okay, that's nice. They closed they figured out their closer problem. Hopefully, they thought they did that last year with Tanner Scott. Well, that didn't work out. We'll see if Edwin Diaz works out. But not to see any major deals. I'm not sure what GMs are waiting for unless they want to get back from the holidays, see what they have in spring training. We are seeing more deals happen in spring training now than we've seen before. But those winter meetings were always like, you always look forward to that. Me as a baseball fan, I was always checking those going, oh, okay. And as a kid, I'd go and take my, pile of cards and go, okay, this guy went from the Yankees to the Dodgers. I got to move that card over. This guy went from the Red Sox to the Reds, move that card, doing all that kind of stuff. And there's no deals there this year. I was like, this is the quietest winter meetings. Maybe everybody's just tired. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe they're all tapped out, except for the Orioles. They had cash.
Yeah.
All right. Our moment of all is next. Okay, time now for a moment of all. This goes out to all the golfers out there. This story is either utopia or it's a nightmare. Josh Simpson on Monday completed a new world record when he played his 581st different course. Now, these aren't just your Mooney 9-hole courses. Each one, to get the record, had to be 18 holes and at least 6,000 yards in length. He started on January 24th and playing 2 courses a day until again on Monday. 581, lived out of a van. He works normally in his family's lawn maintenance company. He's in the UK, so all these were in England, Scotland, and Wales. Burned through 30 gloves, only his second pair of shoes. He was inspired by his mother, who died of cancer in 2023. Want to go out and do something special. 581 rounds of golf, 18 holes, different courses. Josh Simpson says it's the hardest thing he ever had to do and admits in the end, I'm sick of golf. I bet you are. That's our moment of all. Hopefully it's been a good day for you. Go out and do something really nice for somebody else. Say hi to somebody. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Sports IQ.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.